Depth education. Let us continue with the formation of ions, and let us look at the formation of anions. Formation of anions. Let us look at some facts about formation of anions. Firstly, the anions are formed by non-metal atoms, not the metal atoms. Metal atoms cannot form the anions. 2, they are formed as a result of the gain of electrons to the outermost shells of metal atoms. They are formed as a result of the gain of electrons to the outermost shells of metal atoms. Next is the electrons gained, or let me say the number of electrons gained, the number of electrons gained should be able to fill the outermost, this one is non-metal atoms, should be able to fill the outermost shells of the non-metal atoms. And this one is the same as the number of electrons, which is the same as the valency or the valencies of those non-metal atoms. So the number of electrons gained should be able to fill the outermost shell of the non-metal atom, or should be the same as the valencies of the non-metal atoms. Now, in this case, electrons become more than protons in number. Electrons become more than protons in number, and the non-metal atom becomes negatively charged. And finally, the number of negative charges on the anion is equal to the number of electrons it gained in its outermost shell. So these are some simple facts about formation of anions. Remember firstly that the anions are negative ions, meaning that if at all we have an anion, since it is negatively charged, in an anion, let me use another ink color. In an anion, we had just seen earlier on that in an atom of an element which is neutral, the number of protons and electrons are the same in this case. That's why the positive charges cancels the negative charges. So in an anion, since electrons are gained, it means that protons are less than electrons, or electrons are more than protons in number. Reason being, electrons are gained. So if electrons are gained, it means that the positive charges becomes less than the negative charges. So if positive charges are less than negative charges, it means that the net charge will be negative. So the atom therefore becomes negative. If electrons are more than protons, the atom becomes negatively charged. And if the atom is negatively charged, then it is referred to as being an anion. Now let us go back and we look at these facts about the formation of an anion. First of all, it is formed by non-metal atoms, not metal atoms. Remember the non-metal atoms, apart from helium and then neon as well as argon, because they are what we call the noble elements or the noble gases. Those ones do not combine in any way and they have got stable configurations. They neither lose electrons nor gain electrons. So other non-metal atoms with the 4, 5, 6 and 7 electrons in their outermost shells, including even hydrogen, they are able to form what we call anions because they are non-metal atoms. So the anions are formed by the non-metal atoms. 2, they are formed as a result of the gain of electrons to the outermost shell of the non-metal atoms, in this case the outermost shells. So in this case we expect the outermost shell of a non-metal atom to become full by the gain of electrons because it is a very simple process. I want us to try to see this. I have a non-metal element called chlorine with electronic configuration 2 to 8 to 7. So the gain of one electron, gain of one electron, it is a simpler process as compared to the loss of all these 7 electrons. This one is highly energy demanding, but this one here requires less energy, and then in this case the gain of one electron is a simpler process. So a chlorine atom therefore will gain just one electron and then it will become negatively charged. By the gain of one electron it becomes negatively charged with one negative charge, and the outermost shell will be full. So in this case we have said that anions are formed as a result of the gain of electrons to the outermost shells of non-metal atoms. Next is the number of electrons gained. Number of electrons gained should fill the outermost shells of the non-metal atoms. That's why we said that chlorine in this case is able to gain only one electron to its outermost shell because it has got only one electron that is required to fill its outermost shell. So it is one electron just less in this case to have its outermost shell full or filled. So it will gain that one electron, and then the number of electrons will become more than the number of protons, since initially protons and electrons are equal in number. But on gaining one electron, then the number of electrons will be more than the number of protons and the atom becomes negatively charged. And interestingly, the number of electrons gained is the same as the valency of that non-metal atom. Like in this case, the valency of chlorine is 8 minus 7. That is the number of electrons in its outermost shell, subtracted from the maximum number of electrons that this orbital shell can carry. So in this case, the valency of chlorine is 1. So it gains one electron, and that electron is the very electron, it is the very number of electrons required to fill the outermost shell. So, in this case, if an electron is gained, or if generally electrons are gained by the outermost shells of metal atoms, then the number of electrons will be more than the number of protons in this case. So if electrons are then more than protons, and initially protons and electrons are equal in number, but if now electrons are more than protons in number, it means that the number of negative charges which is provided by the electrons, which are negative particles, will be more than the number of positive charges provided by the protons, which are positive particles. And then the non-metal atom becomes negatively charged. And the number of negative charges in this case depends on the number of electrons gained, because that will be the number of excess or extra electrons. So if an atom has gained one electron, it becomes negatively charged with one negative charge on its ion. In this case, if it has gained 2 electrons, it will be having 2 negative charges. So generally, let us not forget that for an anion, in this case, the number of protons is less than the number of electrons, or the number of electrons is more than the number of protons, because electrons are gained in the process of the formation of an ion, and those electrons are gained by the atom in its outermost shell. So protons will be less than electrons in number, or electrons will be more than protons in number, and the net charge is that the atom becomes negatively charged. So that is the net charge, and this is how anions are formed. We are going to look at how different anions among the first 20 elements are formed. So we are going to have a look at that in our next session. This is Step Talks Education. Thank you for watching.